Good afternoon. My name is Rainey Style. As the primary investigator of this project, I would like to formally introduce myself. Siya Rainey Style yun siya. Tatnasah ni Nishle. Tis ani bashishkin. Ki ani deshikhay ado omaha edashinala. My research project relates to suicidal ideations on the Navajo Nation and how using Navajo traditional ceremonies can aid to mental health and suicide, because there are ceremonies out there in Navajo culture that can help and fix a individual's state of mind. In Navajo culture, there was a brief period in time which was referred to as the separation of sexes um, in the yellow world, where men had separated from the women separated from the men, vice versa. And somewhere along the way, the women had relations with beings that were not exactly human. It is for this reason that several months later, beings that were not exactly human, they were abnormal, were referred to as monsters, which in Navajo culture we now have a name for them, which is the Nayet. The Nayet, in total there was 12 born, and one by one these beings brought disharmony and loss to the Navajo people by either killing the Navajo people that were surrounding them or causing havoc. So later on, the two twins, which is another Navajo story, one by one killed all of these monsters. But now in modern times, we refer to these monsters as they have presented themselves in the form of substance abuse, addiction, alcoholism, suicide, and domestic violence. And this project relates to the suicide portion because some medicine men, practitioners, leaders, they refer to the act of suicide as a not yet, because there's no for lack of better words, cure to exactly define this. And this is why it relates to my project. It relates to my project in the sense that the not yet, this type of not yet especially, is going to be with us for who knows how long. And we just need to find cultural practices that could ward off the act of suicide for as long as the individual decides that they can ward it off. This can be done by ceremonies that are intended for suicide, such as the basket turning ceremony, the Hajonje ceremony. The word Hajon in Hajonje is a direct definition of aligning someone's state of mental health and harmony back to the correct order. But my research question for this research project would be, how do we as Navajo people directly identify suicide patterns prior to the actual death? Were there any significant signs that the Navajo people or a family in general might have missed? Are there any ceremonies out there that could have stopped this individual from going down the road that they chose? Is there anything out there that could have possibly just held off on the act of suicide as a whole, and see if the ceremonies or herbs could have been for use? As the primary investigator for this research project, I have chosen qualitative methods such as using a survey and talking circles, which now post-COVID would still be done within a safe distance, and if the subject agrees and is comfortable with the topic, because the topic of suicide can be triggering, or some Navajo people just tend to steer clear of research projects, or just stay away from the word of suicide because it is a scary word. And I fully understand if they don't want to participate, and if they want it to stop at any given point, that would be fine with me. As for research participants of this project, they would have to be over the ages of 18 years and older. Gender is open to anyone, male, female, or those who identify as transgender. But they would have to be local to the Tuba City area, and some of these participants are actually students who attend Dine College, and they have graciously offered time from their busy schedules. This project is important to me because, as so many people across the Navajo Nation and beyond, the topic of suicide kind of hits directly home for me. Because a few years ago, someone that I was raised with, a cousin of mine actually, for a long time, she would say here and there, oh, I'm gonna do this someday because I'm so unhappy with my life. I'm going to go along with it, and this is how I would go about it. And as a child and as someone who was raised traditionally, you try to steer clear from anything that's related to mental health. And back then, I didn't realize how important this was until we got a phone call in the middle of the night, and to me, that phone call was just like, oh, she finally did it. I hate to say it like that, but she had been talking about this since we were in junior high. And around the time she passed, she was probably, I'm gonna guess, 21, 24. And still to this day, she's still at the 21 or 24 age, because that's the age that she passed. And all of us, her family, her friends, were just aging without her. And it hits home to me because I always think, is there something that we as a family could have done? Could we have gone down to Mesa, Tempe area, brought her back to Tuba City, and taken her to a practitioner, a medicine man, anyone that would be willing to help her traditionally wise? Because years after that, we had found a ceremony for another family member that was going down the same road. But as soon as we found someone that said, hey, this individual needs a basket turning ceremony, we got everything together in a matter of hours, drove from Tuba City down to Rock Point, which I believe for us is like a 3, maybe 4-hour drive, because we're not familiar with the neighboring towns aside from Kayenta. And we had the person's clothes because they were kind of reluctant to say, they weren't ready to go into the Hogan themselves. But we as a family decided, let's take their clothes. We asked the medicine man, he said it was okay. So we took their clothes and had the ceremony done on the person's clothes. And within 4 days, we saw small changes. It was surprising, because just to see this person that was headed down the road as my cousin, the same road, I always thought, I kind of pulled my parents aside and what if we had done this for, so-and-so? But we didn't know about this ceremony until recently. It's just one of those what-if questions after someone, passes in that way. What if we had this ceremony done? What if we had gone the lengths that we did for this person and found a patient care plan? What if we had gone to the hospital? Or there's just so many what ifs in this realm of mental health and suicide that kind of arise when, after the fact. But this project is hits home for me, because I want to spread the knowledge that there are ceremonies out there that could be of use. There is herbs that could be of use. Even just praying every day. And as Dr. Ami stated in a meeting with me, just being able to smoke mountain tobacco. Take the time to pray every now and then. And just check up on one another. And as Navajo people, we're not close to each other. I hate to say it like that, but we like to keep our distance. And sometimes we need to break that cultural barrier just to check in and say, hey, Hash and are you doing okay? Then side castish height is how was your thinking? I guess in that way we could have done a lot more if we had asked this individual, my family member, these questions, but by that point it was already too late. My experience with Indigenous research methodologies is being able to incorporate cultural ties such as the stories from Navajo culture, which is always a plus because that tends to be like a small icebreaker, if you will, to get people familiar with the research project and to just have a little bit of time to go in and describe from this story point of view and how it related to my research project. That was an icebreaker for me as the researcher. And other cultural elements such as keh is very important in our culture. And to be able to sit down and have a conversation or ask this individual to participate in this project also relates to keh because you are taking some time from someone's busy day, and would be